I've been on the road for the last day and a half, so I missed the national indignation that erupted after it was seen on Facebook and on YouTube and lots of other video places where 4 black people kidnapped and tortured and beat and did unimaginable things, unspeakable things, unwatchable things to this white retarded kid in Chicago. I call him retarded because dressing up his condition in other politically correct words would really only serve to hide how vulnerable this adult child really was. And you'll see as much of this videos that I can show you, I will show you. The first thing I thought when I saw my emails when I opened up my computer was, Colin, did you see that black mob violence against that handicapped kid? I thought, well, no, I hadn't really seen it yet. So I thought about, they couldn't be talking. A lot of times people will say, hey, Colin, did you see this? And they're talking about something I've already seen. So the first thing I thought about was all the black on wheelchair violence we've seen here. I think of all the black on autistic violence in schools and outside of schools we see here. I think of all the black on senior violence, the seniors in wheelchairs we see here. And I wondered if it was one of those things that we've already done videos on. Well, it wasn't. You know what I'm going to do, though? I'm going to take those. There's about 10 of them, and there's a lot more floating around. I'm going to make a playlist of them. You'll see it here. You'll be able to click to a link on the black on handicapped violence at this link. But you know what else it was, which I was going to do a video on anyway, was the worst case of black on white person kidnapping and torture. This ended in murder. And this is the 10th, this happened right around the 10th anniversary of that. Happened down, a lot of you guys already know what I'm talking about. We're talking about Channon Christian and Chris Newsom. This happened 10 years ago in Knoxville, Tennessee, the home of the University of Tennessee. We'll see we'll see a video of that too that tells the story. A couple of kids recently out of college, a couple of good-looking kids, bright kids, appealing in every sense of the word. Their whole lives are just in front of them. And they hooked up with 5 of the worst people on this planet. I guess it was just a coincidence they were all black. That turned out to be the worst case of black on white torture, kidnapping, and violence I've ever seen. I'm not quite sure how this white retarded kid got away from his torturers and captors. Not quite sure how that didn't end up in murder. But it didn't. I guess I'm glad we didn't. But let's get into those videos, the retarded kid, the recent one, and let's take a look at the 10-year anniversary of the worst one ever.
You hands, bitch. Call your own hands, bitch. Yeah, bitch. What's up, though, bitch?
Are you kidding? I gotta do this.
What's up, though? You good?
Yeah, I'm good, bro.
You good?
I'm really thinking y'all was about to fucking...
Matter of fact, come your ass up. I want your ass to drink some toilet water. My mama. Hey, his ass can drink some toilet water, bitch. I want your ass to drink some toilet water. Stop. I'm gonna rock your ass. Drink that shit right now, bro. Get nice. Drink that shit right fucking now. Bro. Drink that shit. You take that shit. Drink that shit. Drink the toilet water, bitch. Yo, bitch, there. Say fuck Trump. Say fuck Trump, bitch. Come on, bro. Yeah, bitch. It's coming. Come out. Put your bitch ass up. It's coming, shorty. Fuck up. That bitch coming. Drink the toilet water, bitch. Keep drinking. Drink that shit. Drink that shit. Hurry up. Drink that shit, shorty. Man, drink that shit, bitch. Drink that shit. I'll bust your face so bright. You ain't drinking it, bro. Drink that shit, bro. Drink that shit, boy. Drink that shit, boy. Drink that shit. Drink that shit, boy. Drink that shit. Boy, drink that shit, boy. We got 3 more coming, boy. Bro, you fuck that shit up, bro. Man, get the fuck up, boy. Get the fuck up, right now. Get up. Now say fuck Trump. Huh? So say fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Donald Trump. Say fuck Blake. Fuck that. Say fuck Blake. Say fuck Blake, bitch. On black people, bro. Fuck that. Say asking, shorty, what you spazzing up?
Say fuck Mushy, man. Say fuck them niggas. No. I said, bro. Look, stay up, go ass in the corner, bro. Okay. Bro, you don't turn your ass around, bro. Sure, bro. You see how them bitches coming out. Turn your ass around. Turn your ass around, bro. Turn your ass around. Turn your goof ass around. Turn your goof ass. Cut your fucking phone. Hey, fuck Trump, bitch. Fuck Trump, bro. Fuck Trump. Fuck Trump. Yeah. Fuck your ass. Hey, fuck Trump, bitch. Fuck your mom, bro. Nah, don't right now, boy. Alright, get your ass in the corner. Hurry up, get your ass in the corner. Bro, turn the fuck around, bro. Turn around. Turn around. Up the shaker, bro. Up the knife on his ass. He ain't no, bro. Alright, turn your goof ass around, bro. Turn around, bro. Turn around. Stop looking at me while I fuck, bro. Alright, look. Look. Bro, the corner. Put your head against the wall, bro. Keep your shit right there. Do not move, bro. No way. Man, turn up. Where's shake that? Bro. Smack your word. Bro. What you mean, bitch? Donald Trump won, bitch. Fuck you talking about? And this shit should make this go viral, my mama. Fuck that boy. Turn around. Man, take his ass. Turn around. Turn around, nigga. Shorty. Fuck you talking about? Kiss that flow, shorty. Kiss the flow. Kiss the flow. Go in his pocket. 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 Get on your knee. Kiss the flow right now. Kiss the flow. Huh? Kiss the flow. I'll kick you in your shit. Man, kiss the fucking flow, bro. What's up? Kiss the flow, bitch. Say I love black people. I love black people. Say I love black people. I love black people. So you know can't nobody help you right now. I'm just so serious. Let me see. What's your knife? What's your knife, bro? Bro, come on. What's your knife, bro? What's your knife, bro? I ain't gonna play with your ass, bro. Bro, I got you, bro. I ain't even show off no shit like that. Hey y'all look, hey check it out. This shit, hey y'all, he thinking so scared. Watch this. I owe you the thing. Watch that, watch out. Watch this. Hey, watch this. Y'all shake his ass. Y'all shake his ass. Shake his ass a little bit. Shake his ass. Bro, come on. Y'all.
No, I don't want to finish with my connection, man. It is a story we first broke here on Fox 32 News, and tonight there is... No, I don't want to finish with my connection, man. It is a story we first broke here on Fox 32 News, and tonight there is breaking information on the victim of a torture case broadcast live on Facebook. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sylvia Perez in for Don Hansbrough.
And I'm Jeff Herndon. We've learned tonight that the victim in this case was mentally disabled and knew at least one of his captors. Lisa Chavarria is live now with breaking details. Lisa?
Well, Jeff, tonight Chicago police have all 4 suspects in custody. Detectives are speaking with the victim, who they say is special needs. Now, police believe that he was held captive and tortured for almost up to 48 hours, and all of it was posted to Facebook Live. We want to warn you, the video you are about to see is considered very disturbing.
Donald Trump, white people, boy.
This young man tied up in the corner is believed to be from Crystal Lake. Police say he has a mental disability. Investigators say he was a classmate of one of the suspects.
Apparently they met out in the suburbs. These subjects then stole a van out in the suburbs and brought him into Chicago.
Police believe he went willingly initially, but that is clearly not the case based on 3 videos posted to social media. What you are about to see is disturbing. At one point, the victim is held at knife point and told to curse President-elect Donald Trump. The men can be heard saying they want this to go viral. Another video shows the group forcing the victim to drink water from a toilet. Throughout these videos, the victim is kicked, hit, and cut. Police believe he was released after being held anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. Officers found him walking along Lexington and Homan on the west side. They linked a separate call to the scene featured in these videos and were able to find the 2 women and 2 men allegedly involved. Many people took to Facebook outraged, wondering whether this will be considered a hate crime.
But I think some of it is just stupidity. You know, people just ranting about something that they think might make a headline. I don't think that at this point we don't have anything concrete to really point us in that direction, but we'll keep investigating and we'll let the facts guide us on how this concludes.
The Cook County State's Attorney's Office is now looking at this case. Officials say that they expect charges in the next 24 hours. And Jeff, despite all of that racial and hateful rhetoric that you heard in those videos, the Chicago police superintendent says he does not believe these videos were politically motivated.
That went on for 24 hours. Now let's look at the 10th anniversary video of what happened in Knoxville, Tennessee. That went on for days and days and days. It involved torture, violence, murder, beyond anything anyone I know has ever heard of. Let's get to it.
We had heard a report on TV about a body being found that was badly burned on the railroad tracks, but never did we ever connect the two.
We were 2 blocks from where she was. If they'd have just knocked on the door, walked the streets, we don't know if we could have saved her life, but she wouldn't have sat there for 2 days in a trash can.
Anybody that knew Chris was his friend, and he had a smile that everybody just loved.
Chris was an excellent baseball player. A good boy, good kid, worked hard, had a lot of skills. Could have went on and played further if he'd have chose to.
She was a typical girl. I mean, she wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect, but she never gave us any trouble, always did well in school. She was beautiful, but what made her even more beautiful was the fact that she was not stuck on herself.
Shannon Christian was a 21-year-old student at the University of Tennessee. Chris Newsom was a 23-year-old trim carpenter. Both were still living at home and had just begun to date in November of 2006. One Saturday evening, they planned to go to a birthday party for a friend, but instead they decided to stay at Shannon's best friend's apartment to watch a movie.
12:35, the phone rang that night, and he spoke to her on the phone. She called to check in, to let us know that she was coming home rather than staying at Kara's that night. And I sat up, and she never came home.
We had not seen him since Saturday night, which that's not unusual. He was 23 years old, and he kind of came and went, you know, with not a whole lot of restrictions at that age. And the way we discovered he was missing was Shannon's mother, Dina, called and said that Shannon didn't show up for work.
In the early morning hours of January 7, 2007, Chris Newsom and Shannon Christian were carjacked and abducted from the Washington Ridge apartments. They were held captive in a house on Chipman Street near the Waste Connections building. Both were brutally raped and beaten. Chris was led to the railroad tracks near the house, where he was shot 3 times, twice in the back and once to the head execution style. Then his body was set on fire. On Monday, a body found on the railroad tracks was identified as Chris by a homicide detective who had known him through his son.
Detective Snodderly says it's Chris. And we asked, well, how do you know? And he says, I recognized him by his eyes. Everything fell apart at that moment.
All of his friends walked in. There must have been 15 or 20 of them come in all at the same time. And that just gave me such an eerie feeling. So I thought, why isn't Chris with them? And it really put chills through me. I thought, you know, here's all his friends and he's not here. And that was one of the hardest moments.
I got a phone call and it said, man, there's something going on up here at this house by the trash place. And then I got another call that said that they thought that they had found her because they were bringing in, there was an ambulance that had just gotten there.
Shannon Christian was kept alive inside the house for several hours as her captors repeatedly raped and tortured her. A chemical substance was poured down her throat and on her body in an attempt to destroy DNA evidence. She was then bound, put inside 5 trash bags, and then shoved inside a trash can where she was left to suffocate. She died with her eyes open. 5 people have been indicted in these crimes.
Do you know how quick to Shannon and Chris that carjacking went down? Boom. You come down your stairs and you go get in the car and you are cranking your car and your boyfriend gets inside the door there, gonna get him a little sugar. Boom! There's a gun in the back of your head and some big sucker gets in your 4Runner and puts a gun on you just like that. It's done.
I've covered cops, courts, and crime in East Tennessee for about 2 decades now. And this case is unique for a number of reasons. It is unusual to have 2 victims. It is unusual to have a stranger crime in the sense that the victims and the defendants did not know each other. The level of violence is not as unusual, but a bit unusual for the length of time that violence was carried out. It's unusual in how it's gripped the community's attention. And I think part of that is because you have 2 kids who are from fairly well-to-do families, who were not doing anything wrong. People look at this case and they think that could be me or that could be my kids. And so it touches people in that way.
Waste Connections, which is located next to the house on Chipman Street, bought the property where these crimes occurred. In October of 2008, the house was demolished and a memorial raised to Shannon and Chris. There's been an outpouring of community support surrounding this crime. In the 2.5 years since it occurred, there have been several vigils, fundraisers, and support groups formed.
I have never done anything like this before. Everybody has someone in their family that dies, but they don't die like these families' children did. My heart just felt for them. We don't know what it's like, what they're going through, and anything that we can do.
We've got a whole bunch of cards from people that don't know us, that just have to say something and want to say something, you know, that they're praying for us. And there's been an awful lot of support that we really appreciate. It really helps us get through.
We took Shannon, just like Gary takes our children, as part of our family. So we have lost one of our children.
The Shannon Gale Christian Foundation memorializes Shannon through a golf tournament and scholarship each year. The scholarship is awarded to a female Farragut High School student attending the University of Tennessee, as Shannon did.
We've had 3 golf tournaments in her name, and we've given 2 scholarships. Every recipient so far has been so appreciative.
A Little League baseball tournament in Chris's honor is held each year in the Halls community, and a memorial scholarship is given annually to a graduating Halls High School student.
He was honored at the baseball park, at the Halls High School baseball park. We've put a plaque up in his honor. We give a scholarship in his name every year, and that will continue as long as we're here.
The online community at knoxnews.com responds with an outpouring of comments every time the News Sentinel publishes a story about this crime. Many have voiced frustration and indignation over the perceived lack of national media coverage.
That's not entirely true. There has been some coverage. CNN did a piece, Fox News did some reporting. Although this case is shocking to us and certainly unfamiliar territory for East Tennessee, it is not necessarily something that hasn't occurred similar in other parts of the country.
They raped them, they tortured them, they beat them, then they killed them. It's not a normal murder
Certainly there has been discussion among members of various groups, particularly white supremacy groups, trying to use the case and the lack of coverage as indication that it's because you have black suspects and white victims.
I have heard that there's been some people that have talked about how it was a racially motivated crime, and I think that it's a bad thing because that just creates more racism and intolerance and I guess strife in the community.
I don't think it had anything to do with race. I think it was just that's who they saw and they went after him.
From what we've read and what we know about some of them, because some of the people in the community know some of the suspects, that they've always had a life of crime. They were always unstable and they were always into something. And I do believe firmly, and some of the people that I run along with, that when you practice a lot of deceit and when you're involved in a lot of things like that, it's going to catch up with you. And I think it caught up with them.
I don't believe that it had a negative effect on the African American community as a whole, because the African American community is not responsible for the acts of a few individuals who went past the bounds of human decency.
Whether we want to recognize it or not, a case like this sometimes exposes veins of racism that we kept hidden.
I think a lot of people don't believe that things like that can happen here to them, and when they realize that, there's monsters among us, they're coming in here, they want some protection. They want to know what to do to keep that from happening to them or their kids.
Whenever we get a chance, we haven't had the chance yet, but we're going to go and get gun permits and carry a gun also. I just feel like, you really need one now for security, and especially if there's a home invasion or something, you really need to be able to protect yourself now.
We started a class just for women called Women on Target, and it's full almost every month.
Most of the people that I know have a carry permit.
But they didn't used to.
They didn't then. But they do now. I'm not talking about 4 or 5. I'm talking about 100 or more. Everybody I know, everybody that's close to us.
I'm more cautious about what I do and where I go and my surroundings. I'm very scared of going out somewhere that I'm not aware of where I am.
Since it happened, you always gotta be leery of everywhere you go anyway. So, you gotta be leery about people you meet and stuff that you do.
I have a daughter, and I wouldn't want any, as a result of that whole thing, I'm checking up on her every day.
The Christian and Newsom families have yet to grieve their loss. Instead, much of their time has been spent in courtrooms. They've committed to being present during every step of the trial process for each of the 5 suspects. Still, the memories of their children bring them strength and fire their determination.
2 weeks before this happened, Chris had that motorcycle that and he loved it. He rode it all the time, and we were always afraid for him when he rode the motorcycle. We didn't want anything to happen, and he knew that we were scared about him riding it. And he called me one afternoon and said, "Mom, I've sold my bike." And I said, "You have, Chris?" I said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Because I want a life." And that just haunts me now that he said that, and 2 weeks later, here he is dead. It just haunts me.
I'd be sitting in that chair, and she would come, I bet 1,000 times, and slide right over the arm of that chair and sit in my lap. She was so tall, long-legged, her feet still dragging the ground. But she would sit in my lap, put her arm around me, and look at me a certain way. "Daddy." And I would get this feeling that would come over me like, this is going to cost me. If I sit down in that chair and shut my eyes, I can feel her do it. And it sure feels good. And when I open them, I got a rage in me you wouldn't believe. I hate in me that ain't normal.
We still yet have to deal with it on our own, and that is something that we face day to day.
We can't bring her back.
Just always remember to tell your children that you love them, your family that you love them, because you never know when it's going to be the last time that you get to say those words. I was grateful enough to tell her that I loved her the day she walked out that door. And her daddy got to tell her he loved her that night he talked to her. Because that was one thing that we always did. We let our kids know how much we love them. And to be careful. And you just never know when it's the last time.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen an unprecedented amount of media attention focused on the greatest lie of our generation, how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially why cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. That's why cops arrest black people. That's why prosecutors charge them. That's why juries convict them. That's why judges send them. That's why parole boards keep them in prison longer than they should be. And that's why when they get out, it starts all over again. This is the greatest lie of our generation. Over the last 5 years, we've heard Black Lives Matter tell it time and time again, and their satraps in the media, local and national media, just couldn't drink it up fast enough. But whenever we ask for examples, all we get is Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice. 4 examples, most of which aren't even examples, spread out over a really long period of time. But when we show the thousands and thousands and thousands of white and Asian and gay and young and old and male and female victims of this ridiculous tsunami of black violence, the same reporters who are so eager to report the fairy tale of black victimization shrug their shoulders, and on some level or another they're always only telling us one of 3, some combination of these 3 things. 1, Colin, it's not happening. 2, white kids do it. 2, 3, white people deserve it. That's it. Every single time. That's why we don't hear near enough about Shannon Christian and Chris Newsom, the poster children of black on white crime and violence at horrific and unspeakable levels. And for all the opportunities people in the national press have had to talk about this, most just look the other way, because they know today the first and only rule of journalism is don't make the black kids angry.